Welcome to Larry's Library, and this time we're taking a look at Adam Strange Between Two Worlds Deluxe Hardcover. So this is DC, and it's on the regular DC label. It's 408 pages, and it is oversized. This is actually the same dimensions as an omnibus, just not as thick as the typical omnibus. Typical. It has a list price of $49.99. But as I always say, don't be a chump and pay that. Get it from a good discounter, like my preferred vendor, InStockTrades.com, where they have it, as of the time of this shooting, it's still there for $28.99, which is a good deal. I got a slightly better deal because I believe it was one of the books of the week, so it was marked down a little bit even beyond that. Already good discount. Like all the DC hardcovers that I have, this has a really good build quality on it. Didn't have any problem at all. Binding is solid. Paper is a nice stock. It's not super thick, but it's not as thin as some of the Marvel Omnis I've seen that's come through in the last year or two. The pages are not super glossy. They're kind of a low sheen, almost a matte style. Very nice though. Had no issues whatsoever with it. It was very readable, laid over nicely. No complaints on the build. Now, the creators on this one are, well, there's 3 stories in this book. And I will go in the order that they are in. So, the main story is written by Richard Bruning. The second story is written by Mark Waid. And the final part of the book is written by Andy Diggle. Now, the art, same way. The first story is by Andy Kubert. The second one is by Arnie Jorgensen. And the last story is by Pascal Ferry. So what this collects is 3 completely different works. The first story, which is about 40% of the book, was a 3-issue prestige formatted miniseries that came out in 1990, and it was just called Adam Strange. And that's the one with the Andy Kubert art. Now, the second story is Mystery in Space, and it's from 2 issues of JLA from 1998, issue 20 and issue 21, which is written by the always great Mark Waid, with some art by Arnie Jorgensen. Now, the final part of the book, and really the biggest percentage of the book, probably about 50% of the book, is the 8-issue miniseries called Adam Strange that came out in 2004. Now, that one has the art by Pascal Ferry. So, what is this? This is, like I said, it's a collection of 3 different Adam Strange stories from very different eras, 1990, 1998, and 2004. I loved it. Now, bear in mind, again, I'm a Marvel guy. I'm primarily a Marvel guy as far as the conventional superhero stuff. The stuff I grew up on and continue to read most of my life is Marvel superhero stuff. So I know very little about DC. I do know a little bit. I know I don't care for a lot of the big hitters at DC. Not a Superman fan whatsoever, for example. Don't care for Wonder Woman. Unpopular opinions though they are mine. Now, I do like some of the more oddball characters, really from both sides of Marvel, DC. I like some of the oddball stuff, like over at Marvel, I love Adam Warlock. He's been one of my favorites for years. And over here on the DC side, one of my favorites has been Adam Strange. Now, I don't really know when I first learned of Adam Strange. Probably when I was a little kid, I probably seen some ads for it. Now, I probably had some reprint from maybe the Silver Age. I don't know. I mean, the reprint was with the Silver Age. It was of the Silver Age. I'm not that old. I'm more of a Bronze Age guy, if you want to place me in comic terms. But at any rate, so I was somewhat familiar with the character, certainly his look, and I just vaguely knew it as sort of I think I had it in my head that it was a DC version of John Carter, Warlord of Mars, which of course John Carter is an Edgar Rice Burroughs creation from the Prose novels, and then Marvel adapted it. And I've read all of that. I've read all of Marvel adaptations of John Carter, and I loved that shit growing up, and I still love it today. And it does have similar themes to this. You have Adam Strange as an Earthman that somehow ends up transported to another world. And in his case, it's in another universe. And it's another planet. It's the planet Ran. R-A-N-N. I don't know if that's Ron or Ran. I've said it both ways in my head. But at any rate, and whereas John Carter was an Earthman, not even from this time period, I think he wandered into a cave or something, and then he was zapped and transported to Mars, where, you know, he ended up being the savior of that world and freeing slaves and all kinds of stuff. Well, similar thing with Adam Strange. He's an Earthman who somehow ends up being the champion and defender of this other world called Ron, or Ran. You know, and I knew that his trappings and his look, his design, was something that appealed to me, because it reminded me of like the kind of cheesy Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon serials that I'd seen reruns of, you know, on public television when I was young. And that always kind of reminded me of that, his look with the back, with the rocket pack on his back, and you know, the cheesy kind of sci-fi helmet and gear and everything. Just loved it. But, you know, if I had read any Adam Strange, it was very long ago, and I don't remember it really, other than what he looked like, and the character's look and design, which really appealed to me. Well, so I did read this book over the last week or so. I read this one, and spoiler, I did love it. Now, of course, it has its ups and downs, and we'll get into that. So the first story, the one written by Richard Bruning, it came out in 1990. Beautiful art by Andy Kubert. Really good stuff there. So that was a big win for me. And that sold me on picking this book up, actually, because the cover is by Andy Kubert also. I think, I believe Scott Williams inks that cover. I'll show that here. But at any rate, yeah, it's great stuff. And I believe, I'm guessing that based on the introduction, the notes that's in this hardcover, that this was probably a pretty controversial book at the time, at least among older fans of the character, because Richard Bruning, he sort of retcons a lot of that character's backstory. He has his father-in-law Sardath on the planet Ran becomes sort of a kind of a bad guy, you know. He's sort of a sleazy character that you can't trust. He's lying and conniving, and you know. But I mean, I thought it was a great spin on it, but you know, I didn't have a lot invested here with this character, whereas I guess some people did, and so it was probably a pretty controversial story, I'm guessing. But yeah, I loved it. I thought he knocked it out of the park, and the art was great. Great art. So yeah, that was pretty good. And then Mystery in Space, the second story, written by Mark Waid. The only thing about it is he retcons much of the stuff that happened in that story, which I'm guessing DC was wanting to set him up for his own series or something. I don't really know. There's not a lot of back material in here to explain these changes. In fact, there's none. You know, there is an intro to the first story, which sets up what happened there with the retconning, and it did explain that this mini was sort of a that first mini was kind of a tie-in with Swamp Thing at the time, and I believe the writer was, you know, in communication with Alan Moore, and Adam Strange is in 2 or 3 issues of Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, which I love that too. That was a great tie-in that happened there. But anyway, you don't have to have read that to read this, but if you have, you're going to be like, oh, that's cool. You know, you're going to like that. So Mark Waid does away with the whole concept that, well, mild spoiler here, that Adam Strange's wife that he takes from the planet Ran dies in childbirth. Mark Waid retcons that and explains that they only thought she was dead and she actually lived. Now, what Mark Waid does not explain in this is what happened to the doctor that he fell in love. Well, I don't know if he fell in love. He dated a few times, and he had an affair with her on planet Earth, you know, while in between Zeta-beams, which I need to explain Zeta-beams. Sorry about that. I got ahead of it myself. So the premise here, it's kind of trippy, wild sci-fi. It's a little cheesy, but just go with it. That's what I did. That Sardath, the aforementioned Sardath, I think. Sardath. On planet Ron, he creates this thing called the Zeta-beam, and it's supposed to be a communications beam to communicate with other worlds. But what it does is it inadvertently becomes a transportation beam, and it zaps Adam Strange from planet Earth and transports him to planet Ran. And that's supposedly not what it was created to do, but it would do that. But the effects of this beam are temporary, and after so long, the Zeta radiation wears off, and Adam Strange is zapped right back to where he came from, on Earth. So though he falls in love with a woman on that planet, his time there's limited because once the radiation seeps out of his body, the Zeta radiation, he goes back to Earth. And then he has to wait till the next beam is sent, which Sardath will do that, so he can come back again. But it's always a limited amount of time. So that, I thought that concept was really interesting, and you know, I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. The whole man between two worlds, which the title of this collection is Between Two Worlds. You know, again, it's very similar to Edgar Rice Burroughs' John Carter, Warlord of Mars, and that sort of thing, where you got an Earthman that somehow becomes the savior and hero of another world. It's kind of like, in a way, if you think about it, it's kind of like the opposite of the Superman story, you know, where you have an alien that becomes, you know, the big defender of Earth. And I guess you could say the same for Silver Surfer over on the Marvel side. Alien becomes Earth's defender, you know. So, anyway, so yeah, Mark Waid retcons that in that little JLA story. Now, I like the writing on that story, despite me not caring for Superman, and he, of course, is in that, you know, and Wonder Woman and all that jazz. Mark Waid is a hell of a writer. But he does not mention, really, I think he might mention her in passing. I think her name is Evelyn, if I recall right, that doctor lady. So I don't know. I guess you're just supposed to ignore that. And also, at the end of the main, that first story, that first mini, the planet Ran is encased in this egg-like glass globe thing. Just go with it, trust me. And that's never mentioned again for the rest of this book. No one ever mentions that it's inside of this globe, this egg. They just threw that one away. I guess just go with it. So anyway, then you get to probably, I won't say the best part, but just about equal to the first story, if not even better than the first story, is the final 8 issues contained here, which is the Adam Strange mini from 2004, which I said Andy Diggle wrote this one with some unbelievably beautiful art by Pascal Ferry. Now, I had seen Pascal Ferry's work before over at Marvel on some of the Thor issues he did. And I kind of had a love-hate thing going there. Certain panels and scenes I liked a lot, but others just didn't really work for me for some reason. And I never really could put my finger on it. But after reading this, I think I know what it is. I think Pascal Ferry, I think his very strange use of color and lasers and explosions and things, it works fantastic in a trippy sci-fi setting. And I don't think it works as well in a more high fantasy setting. Now, Marvel's Thor is kind of a combination of those things, which really makes sense now why I had this love-hate thing going on. You know, the more fantasy elements I didn't think worked as well with his artwork. But the more sci-fi part of it, the more cosmic stuff, worked great. And here, you get to see him do something that is almost entirely sci-fi, and it is fabulous. I mean, I have such a new appreciation for Pascal Ferry after seeing the art in the 2004 miniseries that's the last part of this book. And man, I was blown away. And the story is really interesting too. It ties up some of the continuity that was left undone there from the other ones, while ignoring some others like the Dr. Evelyn, and the glass globe thing. That's gone. I don't know why they just whatever. But ignoring that little issue, it's fantastic. It starts out as almost a noir kind of story, kind of a detective story, because he's Adam Strange is stranded on Earth once again because of the whole Zeta-beam thing I was talking about earlier. And he's there, and he's, you know, trying to get back, and the new Zeta-beam never appears. He doesn't know why. So he is stranded on Earth. He can't get back to his wife and his child. You know, this is horrible. So he goes into a depression. He starts drinking bad, and he's just he's a shell of his former heroic self, you know, and he's walking around, and it's bad. And like I said, and the first issue or so of it, the first story, the first half of that story arc, in that first issue, it's almost a noir type thing. And oddly, Pascal Ferry's art works really well here. I'll show some scans of that. It's just gorgeous, gorgeous stuff. Until something happens, and I will reveal this much, but then I'll shut up because I don't want this to be full of spoilers. But two alien bounty hunters come to Earth to get him because they want his Zeta-beam technology and some other things. It's a long story, and it's a kind of a complex plot that I don't want to give away here. But they come and they have jetpacks, and they're flying around and they're fighting him, and he manages to get one away from them. And then you're like, cool, now we got Adam Strange back with the rocket pack, because he's got his own rocket pack now again, you know, and he's battling them, and it is wild. And then it does take long, and we're off Earth, and we're back out in the cosmos, and we're embroiled in all kinds of cosmic battles and whatnot. And that Pascal Ferry art is tremendous here. He has these weapons that are made out of hard light, they call it, which that weird effect that Pascal Ferry has with energy, the way he draws energy and whatnot, and the colors it's gorgeous, and it works so well with these hard light weapons. I mean, you're seeing it in the scans. It's I am a Pascal Ferry fanboy after seeing this. I got to tell you, it's wonderful. So so yeah, this thing, I'm giving this 9 out of 10. I went back and forth about whether it's an 8 or a 9. I couldn't give it a 10 because I did not care for the art in that 2-issue JLA miniseries. That's my first problem. And then the second problem is I feel like DC could have had someone at editorial, maybe they could have interviewed Mark Waid or someone, could have contributed a few pages in the middle, or even they could have put it all at the beginning, I don't care, just somewhere, explaining why those plot points were jettisoned. You know, it would have made it make more sense to me. And I even reread back through to see if it's just something I missed, and I don't think I did. It's just not explained. You're just supposed to go with it, you know? Which is one of the problems of a collected serial book in a nice hardcover format. Which is why, you know, I much prefer original graphic novels these days. You know, a self-contained deal that you don't have to explain any of these gaps, you know. But what are you going to do? You're collecting work that was in a different form across 3 decades in this case, you know, on a character that spans back probably 5 or 6 decades. Yeah, so, you know, it's a wonder it works as well as it does, I guess. But again, so for those reasons, I ended up at a 9 out of 10 for me for this, because the art for 98% of it is just solid, just gorgeous, beautiful, and the stories are enthralling. You know, from start to finish there. The writing on all of this is great. I got no issue with the writing of any of it. So yeah, this is a 9 out of 10 for me. It's not quite perfect, but it's damn close. And if you are a fan of Adam Strange, you're going to want to get this. If you're a fan of Andy Kubert's artwork, you're going to want to get it. If you're a Pascal Ferry fan, you definitely want this. Because even though it's only 8 issues of 400 pages, it's probably about 50% of the book, and it's in this beautiful, gorgeous, oversized format that, you know, comic book art looks great at. If it's good comic book art, it looks even better when it's larger. So yeah, this is 9 out of 10 for me, and I'm going to let you go. If you want to support the channel, please check out my Patreon. I do have a clickable Patreon link now, which will be coming up shortly at the end of this video. Makes it easy if you want to sign up for that, and you can give me $1 or $2 a month, or whatever you want to do. It will help me keep this thing going and help me keep ordering all these great books. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.